Welcome to Beyond the Diploma. My name is Avery Park. I'm here with my co-host Emerson Sprinkle and our editor and producer Catherine Trapini.
Yeah, so obviously today's episode is about Lindsay. Lindsay Hameroff. She's a writer. She's written two books, Till There Was You, which was published in 2024, and then Never Planned on You, which is her most recent book. And yeah, she's a writer. She used to be an English teacher, and yeah, this was a really great interview. I feel like she was really insightful.
Yeah, I really loved her, like her energy. She was just so she was so cute. And like Emerson, wait, tell them how we got her to come on the podcast because I think this is like such a true testament of the kind of person
The
she
person she is. Yeah. So basically, we reached out like via Instagram DM. I had seen that she was coming to like a local bookstore near me, and
Yeah.
I had already read her book. And so I was like, oh my God, wait, like I didn't realize she was from Baltimore, which
Shout
is really
out.
cool because
We're from
her
Baltimore.
books like mention Baltimore or are set in Baltimore, which was really funny because we were like going through it and we were like, oh my God, I know exactly where that is. Like she was talking about like one of the parts she was talking about like a snowball stand off of like
Yes.
the road.
It's
And I was like,
perfect.
oh, okay, weird. But anyways, yeah, we reached out through Instagram DM and we were like, hey, this like I know this is a long shot, but like would you like come on our like senior project podcast? And she was like, oh my gosh, of course. And I was like, this is like so freaking cool.
She was so cute because she was also like so excited, which I thought was
Mhm.
just so sweet. Yeah, she's from Baltimore. Emerson and I are from Baltimore. Catherine's kind of from Baltimore. She has the 1 foot in
That's not.
Philly, 1 foot in
Yeah.
Maryland. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one personally because I feel like the advice she gave, whenever she talked, she was just so like not just thoughtful in her words and very articulate as like a writer would be, but she was very almost comforting and very sweet. And all of her advice, I feel like, yes, there's specifics when she was talking about her time in publishing and also being in like writers group and such, but the advice that she gave, I feel like could transcend job description,
Yeah.
especially when she was talking about, oh, what one piece of advice I would give is having a mentor. No matter, and I thought like no matter what job you could be, that could be true, even if you're like a freshman in college, for example, having
Mhm.
someone a couple years older than you who went through the same thing. That's super important. And yeah, also like you said, it's really cool she's from Baltimore. You'll hear in our episode, she talked about the potential of her having a film adaptation of
Oh
her
my
book.
gosh.
And imagine if it is in Baltimore, they could come film.
Oh my gosh. No, that would be so cool. I know it's far out, but guys, watch out. Like 2028, 2029, it's gonna be our time.
Yeah, and we'd be like graduating from college then.
Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's crazy. But yeah, I just really liked you, you good, Catherine.
Catherine just
Yeah.
wants a part in the movie. That's why she's freaking out
Yeah.
right now. She wants to edit that.
No, for real. I just really liked, I feel like there's a lot of like mystique around being an author. Like, obviously, like there's so many books out there, but no one really knows just like how to be an author, like how to publish stuff. So I think that was really cool how she talked about that too. That's something that like
Yeah.
not a lot of people outside of the industry know,
I
especially
didn't
people
realize
our
how
age.
long it took. Like when
Mhm.
I was watching it, she said it took her like 4 years or
Yeah,
something, right?
Yeah. And
crazy.
I thought,
Yeah, because she started in what, COVID time, and then it was released in 2024.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's crazy.
Mhm. Yeah, I thought it was also just interesting how she said like how she just always wanted to be a writer. I think
Mhm.
it's so cool that she's so like, oh, I followed my dream and such. And she also mentioned how there's a part in period of time where she didn't think she was going to be like a novelist.
Mhm.
It wasn't until COVID where she got the opportunity to write and eventually publish, which I thought was just super
I
cool.
also, something that stuck with me from that interview was her talking about how her like normal genre book she read was like very much like Stephen King, like whatever,
Yeah.
and then how
Her into
like
romance.
yeah, for real, like crazy jump to romance. But that makes sense, I guess, because COVID was such a like depressing time. You didn't want to be reading like
hmm
down, but like, it makes sense.
Yeah, she exudes like so much positivity.
Oh,
She's
she's
so
like a ball, like she really
real,
is like
sweet.
sunshine as a
I
person.
know.
I
She,
feel like it's a really good first episode just because like how happy and like passionate she was about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. It was such a nice start. She's just so sweet. I remember she followed me back on Instagram and I was like, oh, gee,
Oh
that's
my God. Yeah, okay. Well, we could talk about this all day long, but I feel like we should show everyone.
get into it.
We should get into it. So,
All
yeah.
right, here she comes, Lindsay Hameroff. Hi, welcome back to our podcast, Beyond the Diploma. I'm Avery Park, and I'm here with my co-host, Emerson Sprinkle. And today we have our wonderful guest, Miss Lindsay Hameroff. So Lindsay, would you mind telling us a little bit about what you do? I'm sure there's much more to being an author than, sitting in front of your typewriter all day. So could you just tell us about like what you do and how you got started?
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me. So I am Lindsay Hameroff. I actually grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. I currently live in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, but I spent most of my life in Baltimore, so this is a very cool project for me. I am a romance novelist. I do that full time right now. So what it entails for me currently, there is the part that you expect, which is where you write the books. My current contracts that I'm under usually having me produce about one book a year. So the first contract I signed was for two books over the course of 2 years, and then moving forward, it's been one book per year. And that is just within romance. Something that some other authors do that I have not done yet is they write outside the genre as well, and then they have multiple contracts going on at the same time. But for me right now, I am just doing just romance novels. I write romantic comedies. And my books are published through St. Martin's Press, which is one of the big five publishing houses. It is a different experience. So that's considered traditional publishing. There is traditional and indie publishing, they are two different models of publication, but I am a traditionally published author. The difference between traditional and indie publishing is mostly that I am not publishing the book myself, or I'm not publishing with a very small press. So I am basically selling my work to a publishing house, and then they are giving me why am I blanking, Lord? They're giving me an advance. Um, and then they pay me. There's a couple different ways the advance is broken up, but the profits then basically go to them. And if I sell beyond what they paid me in the advance, after that I start getting a portion of the profits. So that is what I do for the majority of the day. And then there's all the sort of like other things that go in it. So one of the other things that I do a lot is I blurb for other authors. So if you've ever held a paperback novel and on the back you see the author saying like, "This was such a fun time," that's other authors. That is one of the fun unpaid parts of publishing. We just do that for each other. So other authors or sometimes editors or agents reach out and connect authors, and we basically review books. And then the third thing that I do, which I have to say I think is my favorite part, is basically doing events. So we do all different types of events. I'm going this weekend to the Gaithersburg Book Festival where I'll be presenting. So it's a conference that's all day. They do different panels. I have events where I'm launching my own books. I go to events sometimes where other people are launching their books and I am their conversation partner. So I'll be doing that at the end of the month. Like I'm interviewing other authors when they are releasing their new books. And then the other part of it that's smaller for me at this time is getting rights to movies and things like that. So that is for me right now a smaller part, it is kind of hands off for authors. But I have for my first book, Till There Was You, I have sold the rights for the movie. But that moves very slowly. So at that point, it's mostly just emails being like, "We're working on it." But I would say I would say 80% of my workday is really drafting, revising, going through all, and we can talk more about that, going through all the different steps of revising and the different stages of publishing. And then I would say, the rest of it's 10% events and 10% blurbing other authors. And that is pretty much what I do.
That's so exciting. That sounds like such a good time. So, what first inspired you to be a writer? And then I know you said you do traditional publishing. So, how did you get started like in that?
So I always wanted to be a writer, always like when I was in preschool and I was like writing books about my Barbies. I really appreciate this project too, because I never had the opportunity to talk to an author when I was, getting ready to graduate. And I was always just trying to figure out like, how do you become an author? And I went to college, I graduated in English because that seemed closest. I went to the University of Maryland. I loved the college, but the English department was not so creative writing focused. I don't know if I would say if you want to get a degree in creative writing, at least when I went, which was 20 years ago. Um, there was like one course in creative writing, and I mostly just did like literature reviews. I was getting ready to graduate college, and I was like, I still don't know how you do that. So I ended up doing alternative certification to become a teacher, and I was teaching for 10 years. And then I just didn't really come back to writing until the pandemic. I was home with both of my children, and I was like, I really need to do something that is for me. And I started writing humor pieces, like short humor pieces. And I figured out how to get them published on different websites. And this was back in 2020. Twitter was still Twitter back then. And the different publications were saying, like, you need to create a Twitter account for yourself so that we can promote you and we can tag you on Twitter. So I created Twitter, and it was actually a really fun time to be on Twitter because all the writers were home and they were all sitting on their computer. Like the TV writers were home, everyone was sort of home. And basically the internet taught me how to become a published writer because everybody on Twitter was like, this is what you do. Do you want to write a book? Here's how you do it. And it is one way. There is a lot of misinformation out there. So I think it is so much better if you can find an author and talk to an author and ask, as opposed to just trying to get information from social media. And there are so many authors who want to help and like want to pay it forward. But basically, the first thing I did to work on it was I had an idea for a book. I signed up for a virtual workshop. So I think it was 4 months. It was a virtual workshop. It was 6 writers, and we all worked with one author. So we met every week on Zoom for 3 hours. And each week it was your turn to present 100 pages of a novel. So you worked on your 100 pages and you turned them in basically every 4 weeks. And then we would workshop them. You would read it in advance. People would give you notes. And at the end of it, I had a full draft and I was feeling pretty good about it. And Twitter was like, here's what you do next. I was doing revisions, and then I reached out to get an agent. So getting an agent, I think, is one of those things where like you don't know how to do it unless you ask somebody how to do it. There are different websites. One's called Manuscript Wishlist, which is a good one. But there's different websites that have information for literary agents and what they're looking for and how they want you to reach out. So you send an agent a query letter. It is like it's pretty standard form, like a resume. It's usually 4 paragraphs, basically introducing yourself, introducing the book you've written, a little bit of a bio, and then you usually give an agent the first 10 pages, and you send it to them. And then from there, it's sort of like the Wild West. They can respond, they might never respond, but usually if they're interested at some point, at any amount of time, they will reach out and say, I would like to read the whole book. So I had, I think, 4 agents wanted to read the whole book. And then from there, they can say, I like this book, I want to represent you, or I don't feel like this book fits. And I connected with an agent. She was like, I like this, let's hop on a call. I want to represent you. So I signed with this agent, who is still my agent. And then from there, I did more revision with her. So she had typed up a letter, how I could fix this manuscript, how we could get it in the best form to sell it. And then from there, her job is she has relationships with editors at publishing houses, and she sends the book to them and says, I think you would like this. This might be something you would like. And then they, at any time, or maybe never, respond. Publishing is fun like that. It's just like, who knows? So I got very lucky because we were sending this book out in the summer, and publishing tends to be pretty dead in the summer. But I got very lucky, and an editor who also happens to be from Baltimore. I know she liked this book, and she was with St. Martin's Press. We had 2 other publishing houses that were interested, and we went to auction. So they all put in their highest bid for it, and then we sold the book, and that is how the process starts. And it takes a long time. So I sold my first book in 2021, in the summer of 2021, and it did not get published until winter 2024. So it was a long sort of publication process, but that was the journey.
Wow, that sounds so interesting. I know there's sounds just so cool that there's like such a strong like sense of support what made you sound like among writers. But still like even when you're talking about, the long journey towards publication, it's still, just like it feels like such a brave thing to choose to, become a author and, just typically like follow your dreams. But I'm sure there were many doubts during this process. Did you have any kind of breakthrough moments or just a moment where you felt like this was, like a real career that this was what you were going to do for the long term?
Yeah, there's a lot of time to doubt yourself, especially when you have a year and a half, 2 years. You keep telling people, I have a book, it's real, it really is coming. That's sort of weird. But then, it always feels like they're shifting goalposts because at first you're like, I just want to have an agent. And then you're like, I have this agent, but I don't want my book to die on submission, which does happen. So I have a lot of friends who have written books, they're signed with an agent, some of them are signed with my agent, and then they just cannot sell that book. It's called dying on submission. So they write like another book, and then like maybe they sell that one, or maybe they have to write a third book. And sometimes a lot of like really big authors, the books that are their first books were really like their third or fourth books. So those are like the kind of things where you're like, well, maybe I'm not that good if nobody wants to buy my book. And then there's always just like new ways that you can torture yourself. Why is my advance so much smaller than all these other authors? Why are they getting starred reviews in literary journals and I'm not? Why are they a bestseller and they're hitting all these different lists and there's all these different ways you can feel like you're not as good. And you just kind of have to remind yourself, like something that really helps me is to say like, your like 12-year-old self would be so proud. Like you have to kind of remind yourself, like you really did do it. Like it feels sometimes so like I'm not making it, I'm not as successful as I want to be. And you have to come back to it and be like, my childhood dream was to be a published author, and I'm a published author. And like sometimes that just needs to be enough. So that you just don't get so discouraged and not want to write anymore. But there's always new ways that you can there's so much ways you can doubt yourself. And so I think it's really important to have a good support system, to have a lot of people really recommend not only writing, and it is hard to support yourself just as a novelist these days. The reason I'm doing it full time isn't because they're paying me so much, it's because I was a stay-at-home mom before. So, most people are working a day job, and, I think it helps to be able to say, like, even if I'm not the most successful author, I still have other parts of my life that I'm proud of and other things that I'm doing and other ways that I feel accomplished and not putting, all your eggs in one basket. So I know some people write in two different genres and support themselves by having multiple book deals. Um, some people just actually really do make enough that they can do it full time, but that's pretty rare. You really have to be like a big bestseller to kind of make that kind of money doing it. And some people just do it at night or they wake up really early in the morning and just kind of balance it all. But I think having other things in your life to make you not concentrate and fixated all the time actually is good for your mental health.
So, like, while we're on the topic of writing on in different genres and all that, obviously you kind of lean towards the romance genre, which I think some people have noticed that that might get like unfairly dismissed in literary circles. And so, one, why did you choose to write romance novels? And then two, what would you say to those people who might not take romance novels as seriously as other types of writing?
Such a good question. So I actually supposed to surprise myself that I write romance because before I wrote romance, I wasn't a huge romance reader. So a lot of people are like, I've been reading, these Harlequin romances since I was 9 years old. And I was like, not me. I was reading Stephen King. Like I was really into like lit fic and horror and all this other stuff. And I stopped reading it during the pandemic because I was like, this is really stressful. This is an upsetting time. And I don't want to read these upsetting books where people are getting murdered. And, I just want romance novels always have a happy ending, and you always know that like stuff's going on, but it's going to end happily. And it's very comforting in a world where like you don't always know how things are going to turn out. But all my ideas that I always had for novels as I was through the years being like, no, I'm really going to sit down and write, they always were just love stories. I don't know, that's just kind of what inspires me, even though it wasn't so much what I was reading. And so I had been writing this comedy for like a year or two. I was just writing like short comedic pieces. I was writing like parenting humor and political humor and just like pop culture humor has always been my favorite. And I was reading romance novels and then I stumbled across Casey McQuiston's first book, At the time, it was their only book. It was Red, White, and Royal Blue. And I read it, and it was so different for me from the contemporary romance I had been reading. I had been reading like more of like a Colleen Hoover style, like they're just heavier. And I read Red, White, and Royal Blue, and I was like, oh, this is what I want to write. This is like the marriage of humor and romance that feels right. And I think it's really important if you're thinking about writing to figure out like whose style of writing, whose career you want to model yourself after. Like what kind of books are the kind of books that you want to read and kind of lean towards that. And so once I found Casey McQuiston and then I was reading just like other writers who write romantic comedies and I was like, this is feels right to me. This is the like the intersection of my interests. And once I stopped trying to write serious romance, it came out so much easier. That was sort of how I got into that.
Okay, so now that we're talking about the creative process, I just have to ask about, now that we live in a world where AI is becoming more and more part of everything that we do, I just have to ask, as a novelist, but I also know that you worked in like education, just your take on AI plus, the world of the humanities. I know I've seen movies are now even using AI in their films, and, is there a time where they'll just be a part of our literature? But also, the skills that come with being a reader or a writer, do you think those in time will be more valued or will it go the other way? Will it become, more phased out, especially because already people don't really take the humanities as seriously as they do, for example, like a STEM major. So I have to ask your opinion on this. This
Yeah.
I've been thinking about a lot, actually.
Oh, it's true. And it's a huge conversation that's always being had in the industry. And I think, honestly, I don't think the humanities were ever taken as seriously as, the STEM, even before the AI. But it's interesting to both the conversations that are had in the industry of writing and also the conversations that are we having outside, because the opinions outside of writing are like, this is great. We love this, and we're using my friends who are not writers are like, oh, I use AI all the time to write my emails and write my reports. And I'm like, it just like it drives me crazy. And then like there's a huge fear, in the industry because of course, you're not allowed to use it. And of course it's considered copyright. Actually, it's interesting because I actually looked into this because another student had asked me about this for another project. You cannot, when I write my books, they are copyrighted to me, but a book that has been written even in part with AI cannot be copyrighted because copyright laws only allow copyrights to be assigned to humans. So you actually can't even copyright an AI book, but there is a huge fear that that publishing industry is going to be taken over by AI, and it's not an unfounded fear. I don't know if this came up in your news at all, but there's like a class action lawsuit right now against Meta because Meta had taken all of our books, my books, everybody's books, and used them illegally to train AI. My contracts, my since my third one, my book contracts have a clause in there that says my writing cannot be used to train AI. But it doesn't always work. When things get pirated, there's a pirating issue anyway with people, like readers pirating books and just uploading them for free, and that ends up getting to AI. So, I think a lot of people are afraid that publishing is a business. Publishing houses are businesses, and of course they're going to be interested in not having to lose money to pay writers when they could not, pay writers and just make profit from AI writing. So I think there is a big concern about it. And I think the fears that writers have of losing work, I think is not being matched by the enthusiasm of people outside who are just like, I love this because I don't have to think and I can just have AI do it for me. So it's definitely something that we're like, are we still going to have a job in 20 years? I think right now it feels like AI is being used more to write scripts and movies than it is to being write books. I feel like that's the experimental way. But I don't know. I mean, right now I would say AI is not strong enough. Like you can tell when something's been written by AI, but it's only going to get better. The technology is only going to improve. So it's definitely something that we are all concerned about. Even like we don't like, there's a lot of like writers are not supposed to be even using AI to create art to promote their books on social media because it's like just stay away from AI altogether for, reasons of ethics. So it's a concern.
Yeah, I think that's like a very well-formed answer because I think there's a lot of nuance to that question. And so I guess now when you think about students like building their long-term careers and like navigating the future, I guess what advice would you have for students who are following this kind of like, I don't know, a more like non-traditional career path and something that you have to navigate yourself, especially like a creative one?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the best thing you can do is get a mentor. Get somebody, like ask somebody who's in the field, find somebody that you admire and reach out to them. And even if they don't answer you, try again because I think having a human mentor and really is like a path that you need. And also try to find even like peers. So like I have like a Slack group of other writers and we all just bounce, things off of each other. This came up. Has this ever happened for any of you? Having like a peer group is really helpful. I think that there is like a tendency to want to keep going to school forever as opposed to just starting out. And I think my personal experience, even when I was teaching, is it's better, I think, to work for a little while and figure out what it is. If you want to get a higher education, figure out what you want to do at first. I was teaching English and I didn't get a master's right away because everyone was getting masters in ed. And I worked for like 5 years and I was like, I want to be a reading specialist. And I think it was better to wait and figure out when you were in it what skills you wanted to build on. Because even as a novelist, it's nice to have those skills. Um, there is sort of people think that you need to have an MFA to be a novelist, and you really don't. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's great. MFAs tend to produce, serious writing. And if you want to write more genre-based literature, I don't feel like it's even taken as seriously in those programs. So if you want to write, literary fiction, and I think then that's something you can pursue, but lots and lots of really successful novelists, like not only did they not have MFAs, but they didn't even go to college. Like I'm pretty sure Colleen Hoover did not go to college. Abby Jimenez did not go to college. And like they're like the titans of the industry. Emily Henry does not have an MFA. So it's just I think to trust yourself and get out there and try and really join the workforce and not worry so much about having the right degrees. And I think it's better to follow in someone's path and get experience. And also just don't be afraid to ask questions.
Nice. That kind of leads into our last question kind of nicely. If you were imagining yourself as a senior in high school and you were going to go back and mentor yourself, what is one thing that you wish you could have told yourself? And also, if you were to do the whole process all over again, would you do it the same way or would you do it any differently now, being on the other side of that journey?
I was actually thinking about this question this morning when I knew I was gonna have this interview, and I was thinking like, would I do anything different? I'm not sure that I would do anything different, especially because things change so frequently. I mean, I couldn't have even told myself, you don't have to have social media following, but if you do have a social media following, it does help you get a book deal, and like those things just change all the time. I think the biggest advice I would have given myself is to just get started, like to not feel like, perfection has to be the enemy of good, wherever that's, I think I'm saying that expression wrong, but, just to not feel like you have to wait for the exact right moment. And I just remember being like, I have this idea. It's not really that great. I don't know how to do it. I'll just like do something else in the meantime. And I don't think that I, would have done anything differently. I don't think that I was ready to publish a book any earlier than I was, but just to not be discouraged, not to say like this dream feels unrealistic. You know, it was a fun childhood dream. Now it's time to get serious. You don't have to feel that way. You can really make it happen. So that's what I would have told myself, not to be discouraged. Find a mentor, just do it, just write something, just get started. I think that's what I would have told myself.
Yeah, that's so great. Thank you so much for just like coming on and
Thank
like
you so much.
talking with us. Like this has been so amazing. I loved your book. I read Never Planned on You. It was like absolutely amazing. So I was really excited when you decided to come on. And so yeah, we just want to say thank you very much. This has been very insightful. Yeah, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank
Problem.
you
Thank
so
you so much
much.
for doing this.
Yes, I also would like to say thank you so much. Emerson did read it. I saw she was on the beach reading your book, and we both love English so much. So this was really special to us specifically. So thank you
Yeah.
so much again.
Love an English nerd, a fellow English nerd.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, have a great rest of your day. And yeah, thank you so much again.